Okay, it's about time to start. So I hope everybody is in the right room because this is not the Game of Thrones showing, but the Game of Phones. I have a lot of custom drawings in there, and this was the one slide that I thought is most fitting to all of it. We have an iPhone in the middle that is controlling all the IoT devices underneath, and that's also my talk, iOS and IoT. Don't let your toaster bring down the internet. Before I start, I want to set some expectations for this talk you can have. There's a lot of topic to cover. Like, we're talking both about iOS and how to secure it, but we're also talking about IoT, and we're also going to talk a little bit about data security. That's going to be a lot of stuff to cover. So I'm only a fast speaker, and therefore I try to put together like a GitHub repository that's been around for a while now, that has further links to read on these topics. I'm not going to show any code, as I don't believe there's like a solution in this security field that fits everything. I'm going to point out to certain examples and certain things you can use, and further examples are available in the GitHub repository. I hope this is going to be fun, informative, and hopefully inspiring to all of you. My name is Florian Harr. You can find me on Twitter at CaffeineFlow. You might hear a little accent in my English. That's because I'm originally from Germany, but I used to live for the last 3 years in Atlanta, Georgia, so that's where I come from a background. I've been doing IoT stuff before we even called it IoT, which sounds like a long, long time back, but it's not. It's like 6-7 years back. I started basically working for Somfy that's been doing like shutters and sun shading stuff, and we've been automating those with the iPhone already 6-7 years back. And back then it was still home automation and stuff like that, and I felt like already at the point when the first CTO came up and was like, hey, we should tweet when you open your door automatically. I felt like, that's a strange idea. Like why should I have like someone, or why should I publicly like announce that I'm opening or closing my door? And that was the first time that I've actually felt like, there's more to it than just like the home automation part, but also the security part, which is probably even like, or which is not probably, which is more important than the home automation part. Slightly afterwards, I've started studying, and I've been working with Bosch together on a few IoT projects that I unfortunately can't disclose at this time. And recently, for the past 1.5 years, I've been working with a company in Atlanta, Georgia called Stable Kernel, who's been developing a IoT solution for water heaters and air conditioning systems. And all of this is going to come into my talk a little bit on the experience part, why I'm talking about iOS and IoT security. But to give you a bit of my motivation, what was my motivation to think about that? Like, again, I've been working in this industry for about 6 to 8 years. And about 6 to 8 years back, we only had like these super luxury, like the super like expensive luxury homes that had some kind of home automation in it. The usual home wasn't normally automated, or usually didn't have any kind of automation parts. So we were dealing at the time with about 100,000 customers, maybe all over the world at a time. Slowly evolving to that, I looked into the numbers, and even back then, like a few years into that, maybe 3 years back, we only had like maybe 1 million. But I recently looked into the numbers again from the HVAC and water heater system that I've been developing, and we were easily in the millions. And so I was like, like if I look at the growth and look at it like how many IoT devices there are available, if we look at the US population that is roughly 325 million people compared to the world's population of 7.5 billion people, and then look at that we already have over 8 billion IoT devices, I was like, wow. I mean, if we look at how many iPhones been sold, like that is an really, really immense, that it's like it's a significant growth over the years. And I've tried putting that into context with Norway and the population of Norway. I mean, Norway is great, but Keynote really failed me here, because I've been putting in 5.5 million people and it wouldn't even render. So for the sake of like working with that, I'm gonna keep talking about the US population. I really would love talking about the like population in Norway, but it would basically not be too efficient talking about like such high numbers compared to 5.5 million people. So if we look at how the growth rate is expected by Gartner and even further, like further conservative sources, if we look at how the US population and the world population will grow within the next 3 years, there's basically a growth between 1% and 3%, which is relatively low, but it is the standard rate the population grows over this amount of time. And Gartner predicts for 2020 that we have more than 21 billion IoT devices. So if we stack up the world population, the bar that we have here, on top, we are not even there yet. So that means on average, we have like three IoT devices by 2020 all over the world. Now this includes remote places like Cuba, where you have to have a Wi-Fi card to buy and go to a certain place that has Wi-Fi. And that includes places that are not even connected yet to the internet, or even places like North Korea, where there's like no public internet basically. So that would also mean that like it can't be possible that like 3 devices or 2-point-something devices fall onto each and every one of us, but that the most, or the modern world and the most developed parts of the world will have like a over average amount of IoT devices per person. And again, these are conservative numbers. I couldn't find lower numbers. I don't believe all of that, but if we take a look even further at 2025, the world's population looks ridiculous small to that. We are at Norway here again compared to the US population, because the US population won't render again. We are exactly at this point again. Because in 2025, and again, these are Gartner numbers, one of the more conservative numbers, we are at almost 80 billion IoT devices. Like everybody in this world, on average, should have like 10 IoT devices by then. To put this in even like a little bit more context on looking at all of it, or looking at it from a global perspective, we have America as the most consumer-loving market in the world. Everybody's just buying shit there, which also means between 30 and 50 devices will fall on per person there. So on average, 30 to 50 devices will be connected at your home at all times, so you can control them with your iPhone or whatever. Which leaves, for the rest of us, 62 billion devices for about 7.5 billion people, which is a ridiculous number. Again, I want to point out there are places like Cuba in there. I'm not sure if you guys been there. I've been there recently, hence I'm so excited about it, because there's no internet basically. This is the first time you can take out your iPhone and there's nothing. So let's put this into like a more historical perspective to see how unprecedented this event is and how unprecedented this kind of growth is. If we look back at the last 500 years and we look over population and devices, and we look over the growth of population we had compared to the number of IoT devices, we had to see one that took 2 years to develop between 1936 and 1938. We have the Xerox Alto that came almost 40 years later, which is more or less the first modern computer. We have the iPhone 1 10 years ago, and we have in 2016 the first real IoT devices that made it to the market. Again, the Connard Suzy, as a German I can say that, took almost 2 years to develop, and it's known as to be the first kind of computer, what we can call it. We have the Xerox Alto, which was in 1973 released to the world. It never actually made it to market, but it's known as to be the first real computer, and that one was 10 years ahead of its time. The iPhone 1, who remembers the iPhone 1? Great. 10 years ago, remember 10 years ago, and we have, if we think about the iPhone 10, who probably a lot of you are gonna buy, with the notch and all the like face sensing camera and whatnot, there's a lot of growth in between and a lot of significant improvement over the time. Now, if we look at the first Smart Toast in 2016, that was released in February. And does anybody, I'm pretty sure we have a few Americans in here, does anybody remember what happened on October 21st, 2016 with these toasters? No one? Well, if you were trying to get on Twitter or eBay or GitHub, all of these services were down. You were fucked. Like this morning, if you wanted to work, no. That didn't work really, because all these toasters were attacking one single DNS server that was hosting most of these services, and that one was down. So it took, what, like less than 10 years for the first IoT device to like 100,000 IoT devices attacking one service, and we brought down the internet for a majority of the United States. So I was wondering, what's going to happen in 2020 when we have these massive toasters? Are we going to have like a smart toaster? And will this smart toaster actually kill us? That was a real vision I had, and the fun thing about it is I went onto Google like I always do, put in like toaster apocalypse, and there's actually a cult around it. There are actual people believing in it. I am not the only one telling this story, by far not. So I was wondering, what does it take to actually prevent this toaster apocalypse? What does it take to get further on and like evolve away from this like apocalypse coming to us? And I found that there's 3 parts to the equation. First, it's iOS security. We can do a lot on the mobile side already, defending our data and defending what we actually control and what we do. So one of the parts is iOS security. The other part is IoT security. We want to secure those devices. After all, we're not all hardware developers, so I'm not going to teach you on what kind of circuitry you should use, but I'm trying to show you a few failed examples, and I'm trying to show you more the methodology on how to fix it. And at the end of the day, all of this would be not necessary if we wouldn't protect this little guy and we would actually have data security. So normally when I bring this up and when I bring this up to the client, the first thing I normally hear is like, oh yeah, we're going to have like one cycle of doing all this kind of security stuff after we refactor the code. Everybody knows refactoring doesn't happen, so why should security happen? The next thing, when I'm like, yeah, why don't we do this like after we get off this meeting? I hear like, oh, Florian, but security is complex. Like, we don't want to have to deal with this because, you know, like it's Friday and the party's afterwards. And if we just be on Reddit a little bit more, that's all going to solve itself. I tell you, like, security isn't that hard. I want you guys to look at the source code I'm presenting here for maybe 30 seconds and tell me it's C code if you could write it. I know there's a lot of sub-functions in here. Just expect you would have them. Less than 30 seconds, but who thinks they could write that within a day? Come on, guys, it's C code. Give yourself a little more credit. It is relatively easy to write this. And let me prove you, if you think you can't write that thing above, I'm pretty sure you can write this. Does anybody see what this is or what it could relate to? So let me unveil it. This is the actual source code used in the attack on the Mirai, that the Mirai botnet was using on October 21st, 2016. This code has been released. It's publicly available on GitHub. The person that did that attack confirmed it is this source code that's been used. You can actually disassemble it when you have a device that was attacked and see it. But if you look at the strings that are being deciphered from this string over here, you can already have a guess that this is probably some kind of login mechanism. And what it does is really only testing standard passwords against the open internet on Telnet. So if you had like let's say a Xiaomi Yi action camera or something like that, and it had a standard password of root admin or admin, it was automatically testing that, and that's all it was doing. Security isn't complex. If you would have changed your Telnet password, you wouldn't have been attacked by that. So it's pretty ridiculous thinking about the fact that we are like, oh, there's this like secret attack vector that this person's using that's been working 20 years in the chip industry and had found this way around with like a open bit or whatever. And it's really only been this. So it's not that complex. Take away your fears and actually start doing security. So let's talk about iOS client security. I have iOS in parentheses here because I want to talk about a broader spectrum, and I'm actually going to have a few Android things on the repository as well. But as an iOS guy, that is my actual area of expertise. So does anybody in the audience have a FOSCAM security camera? No? Okay, I have a few. And if you put that into Google, you find that like Fuzzcam was over your iPhone, over Bluetooth, opening a port so you could eavesdrop on the camera, and everybody else could basically, because your iPhone wasn't secured over that, and that was pretty bad. Xiaomi. Anybody in the audience has Xiaomi devices? On average, you have to have. Like, I know you guys are shy, and that's fine with me. As a German, I'm being considered shy in the US. So, but Xiaomi is the same thing. Like, if you think about it, Xiaomi is basically the Apple of China, and on average, like in 20 people, there's at least 4 of them that have like a Xiaomi device. They sell fitness tracker, for example, that are like $20 or less. And if you look in Google again, like Xiaomi personal data, Xiaomi stealing personal data, Xiaomi collect personal data, Xiaomi sending personal data. If you ever looked at the app, and we're going to come to that in a second, they upload all your data to their servers, and this is how they make money on you. We're going to start on this one a little different. I don't expect to see any hands, but does anybody know what it is? Nobody? Does that give you a little better hint what it could be? It's WeVibe. It's a Bluetooth vibrator that you could control with your iPhone and control the vibration patterns you were doing. You could do that remotely, local. But the best thing about it is they were uploading and analyzing all that data. I'm sorry to pick out like such an explicit example, but they have a lawsuit and they lost their whole company on that. So if you think about that, they were uploading, you only had a Bluetooth connection, that they were uploading all those patterns and analyzing it. It is ridiculous. It could have easily been prevented, and even though they claim they didn't like actually use any of that data, we don't know, and we only have to see from a legal perspective that he possibly did. So what did I do to look into a few other cases that potentially are better than this? In the US, a lot of people have a Nest thermostat or Ecobee thermostat for their air conditioning system, which would automatically set your AC on a usage pattern. So I was man in the middle proxying with Charles to see what kind of technology was used underneath to communicate with the thermostat and how many web requests were done. So what I did, I was going into the app, I was setting the temperature, once higher, once lower, went back in, and every time a request was made to a specific host, like it would pop up on the left-hand side. I've did that for 3 examples, and we're going to look at each one of them. Again, I was going in, going out, and confirming, and I was checking on how many requests were made and how they were made. So if we look at Nest, Nest is a very popular, it belongs to Google by now, but they made 25 API calls for a single temperature change, from 7 of which, those 25, were analytics related to 5 different hosts. It's pretty interesting that it needs 25 API requests or API calls to change a single temperature value. And especially interesting is that we have like 7 analytics related calls, and they were like analytics sent off that weren't even like remotely connected to your temperature. We have 5 different hosts that were targeted, which is also pretty interesting looking at it from a perspective of like if you would have cross-header in this, if you would have cross-header stuff, you have 5 different hosts that you're connecting to. 5 different hosts that potentially Nest doesn't control. More interesting is that if you're going to block one of those calls or one of these calls that actually change the temperature from a that's targeting their V6 API, it will automatically drop to the version 5. So if you remember how the NSA intercepted calls on your mobile phone, they were just targeting all 3G networks, they were jamming those, you were dropping to edge, had a lower security, and they could easily intercept your calls. I don't say it's necessarily the same thing with Nest, but I don't think it's a good way to drop to a legacy API. You don't have any local communication, so if you're ever out of internet, you cannot set your temperature manually anymore with your iPhone. You would actually have to stand up from your bed and like change it. Not too inconvenient, but think about a more accessibility kind of way of changing your temperature. We had a lot of customers that were handicapped in one way or another. We had a lot of blind customers. They were telling us that for the first time in their life, they were able to change the temperature, because themselves without actually having to touch a lot and like not knowing what they would change, because iOS offers a lot of great accessibility features. It's a platform, for example, that a lot of like handicapped people use, so you should have local communication if they don't have internet, for example, because it's not only a convenience feature. For the communication between Nest and the actual Wi-Fi, they use OpenFret, which is an open source communication protocol that Nest developed, which is pretty nice. I did the same thing for Ecobee. As we can already see, there's less amount of hosts that we're actually targeting, that we actually hit. I go in again, I go out. This time even with degrees Celsius, which I like a lot better than Fahrenheit. And if we look at that, we only have 19 API calls. 6 less, not too much, but only 4 of them were analytics related, and really nice is that we only have 2 hosts. We have Crashlytics and Ecobee. Everything else is handled by the Ecobee API, which I like a lot because I'm not sending data to some third-party source that I don't know about that could screw up the SSL certificate, that could screw up anything like that. And that is a really nice feature that I think is a security standard that like iOS is behind on what the web uses, for example. We don't have no local communication with Ecobee. You would have to have a third-party kit like HomeKit or something like that that would give you a local communication channel. So if for offline cases, we use a proprietary communication protocol. So this time we don't know how the Ecobee is communicating with the Wi-Fi, but it's not an open source protocol that we can look into. And the last one, which is more or less a firework of hosts, as you can see, is Xiaomi. For Xiaomi, I didn't have like a smart thermostat, but I had like a little plant or soil sensor that I've put into my plant that communicates over Bluetooth with your phone. And yes, you can see it's a firework on the left-hand side. We're going to talk about how many requests in a second, but notice the little bar that's going to show up in here in a second. Synchronizing historical data. What do you guess this is going to do? Upload a whole data blob to their servers. And you can't even use the Belden Sensor when you're not connected to it via Bluetooth, which doesn't make sense why I should upload like my data if I can't access it at any given point. So for a single request that we've just saw, we have 34 API calls. 50% of them contain analytics. I can't say it 100%. My Mandarin isn't that good anymore because a lot of the JSON strings that they're sending up are just plain Mandarin, which is hilarious. Also, they have data blobs that you completely upload, complete data blobs that you just put into the server. They have software logs, as I mentioned, both from like not being able to access your data that you just uploaded to software logs that prohibit you from using it in a foreign country that they don't allow you to use it in. And again, it's Xiaomi. Like you have proprietary communication protocols for every single thing. I've looked into with an HackRF into the Bluetooth protocol. It's different every single time. Every single time you have like a different device, it's different. So yeah, I don't know what to say about it. Even better, America, like the most, not only most consumer or the biggest consumer market in the world, but the most data-loving market in the world, I guess, or most data-loving government in the world. Every time you fly to America, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have all these security questions, and like they have all these new restrictions every time where you can't bring in your laptop on board and stuff like that. But there's an easy way around it. Like so Delta and like all the other big US airlines offer you to have Sky Priority or to have TSA Pre, which gives you a VIP lane and less security checks to go through to the gate into the security zone. Now you would believe these are things that are really like only for trusted travelers, that are things that you only get after you've been through a certain security program. But I'll tell you like no. I've got it several times as a kind of a promotion. And as someone that lives in the US, they already have a lot of data about me. So I was always thinking, oh yeah, Florian, that's something that you only get because they already know everything about you. But it's not the case. You can easily get that if you're only changing a single Boolean flag in the in the JSON stream that you're getting in. If you're doing the man-in-the-middle attack that I've been showing you earlier, where you basically have the JSON stream getting around, it is a Boolean flag. I call it bullshit that this is something that only people get with a high security, because I might have high security on my MacBook, but it doesn't mean the Delta app has it, because they have nothing that is going to prevent you from changing the bit flag, getting sky priority or TSA pre, and you're going through the fast lane that possibly lets you have like liquids and all the other things that is restricted for everybody else. I was initially, like you can see that this screenshot is pretty old. It doesn't mean I did this screenshot like many, many years back. I was already starting to write my blog post about it. Then I found this guy that posted it in 2013 already. He publicly like came to Delta and was like, oh yeah, you should change that. As of today, they haven't changed it. They could have done it easily if you had in the PK pass a web service URL registered that would have updated the PCAS like several times. And they didn't have it in there. They have it in now, but it still doesn't update the PK pass for that Boolean flag. It's ridiculous because their web service doesn't even like reply with the TSA pre flag. They could have easily avoided that also with a revalidation at the gate. So these are easy steps they could have done. And even better are the TSA requirements you have to have. As a boarding pass is the only document TSA security employees will accept to prove your status. If you applied for TSA pre-check under Matthew but have a Delta profile set up under Matt, you'll need to update your name in your Delta profile in order to re-app the benefits of your pre-check status. No, it's only Boolean flag. Fuck you. So what can you do as a summary in the iOS client side? I said it before, do more with less. Have transport layer protection, especially for something like Delta. Like I would have expected them to have a certificate and public key pinning. Like it would be super easy for them, especially as they update their app relatively often, to have like their certificate pinned onto the app. So the trust chain, I couldn't have broken into the trust chain with my man-in-the-middle attack and set the Boolean flag myself. Use the iOS keychain for important data. Like if you actually have a jailbroken iPhone, for example, and you look into the application container data for the Xiaomi stuff, it's all in core data. Your API authorization, your password, all is like plain text in core data, not non-encrypted. Provide local and discovery and communication. Not everything has to go over the internet all the time. You could easily have like a JSON stream also going up to the Ecobee directly that so you wouldn't have to have internet all the time. Do more with less. Like Apple provides HomeKit. Apple provides all these kind of APIs. There's the same thing in Google Home, Android things. They give you a lot of like friendly statuses or friendly defaults, really nice technologies to use that give you a lot of things for free. A lot of these security things are relatively hard, but all that is here is basically free stuff you get. It's free for all. It's on the ground. You only have to pick it up. There's nothing you actually like hurt yourself doing that. And all of that is relatively nicely combined in the Open Web Application Security project. They have an iOS developer cheat sheet that brings a lot of these things up and shows you how to do certificate pinning. And the same thing goes, I have all of that and more information on the GitHub repository to this talk, where there's also an example how you can use Let's Encrypt and to get a free SSL certificate and do certificate pinning. And as long as you update your app within 3 months, which is the amount of time the SSL certificate is normally expiring in, you should be fine. You can do certificate pinning. So let's talk a bit about IoT device security. So I was thinking a long time on what I can do to show you guys like how to do IoT security. And it always came down to like, I don't want to teach you how to write firmware. That would be super boring. So I was rather trying to show you an example of a really good IoT application and a really good IoT device. So even if you're not into writing firmware, that could be easily done. We're going to take a guess and hopefully someone in the audience will know what I'm talking about. The system I'm searching for is based on open standards. It uses Zigbee between devices or between machine to machine. And it uses the constrained application protocol for the communication between the iPhone and the hub. It's a local hub only, so it works initially only with a remote, and you buy the hub in addition to that. it integrates well with other systems. So you can integrate it with Home Assistant. You can integrate it soon with HomeKit and Google Home. And it is an open standard, like the documentation for that is all open. Again, it works out of the box, and it has friendly defaults. The company who made it? IKEA! Sure, the best technology company all around, like better than Apple and Google combined. We all know that every time we go to IKEA and assemble our furniture, we know it's the best technology company, right? I don't hear any yes, which probably tells me that IKEA is not like the best technology company. But if we look at a scheme and how they did the drought-free system, that is a great example of a great IoT system. We can already, like, we can guess or sense a little bit on what their thought process was when they were developing the drought-free system. Let me tell you, like, I feel like most likely and looking at the blog post that a few of the IKEA developers behind the drought-free system published, they were aware of that they were not a cloud technology company. They were aware they're not Apple. They were aware they're not Google. And so they didn't want to reinvent the wheel. They weren't up to open up your local home or your home automation devices all to the world to give you the freedom of remotely like controlling those. And so what they've said is like, we're gonna take technology, we know that works, we take technology that's proven, and we're gonna use other companies' products like HomeKit and Google Home to integrate to the outside world because they know better on how to update and maintain those devices than we do. And so what they created is basically the drought-free system where you would only buy the LED light bulb that is connected to a remote that you're getting with the bulb. You can buy a hub that is only wired, so you wouldn't have to wirelessly connect it and have another point of exposure. And it uses Zigbee between the hub and the LED light bulb. And for everything else, they're using a lightweight machine-to-machine, that's the constrained application protocol, because it's a proven technology that's worked. And they knew they wouldn't have to do like massive amounts of data or anything that would require some higher protocol like MQTT or some stuff. And for everything else, they have HomeKit support and Google Home support that integrates with everything else, which I think was a really clever way of doing it because they could potentially be up for liability if they would publicly expose something in a security hole. So as a summary for the IoT device stuff, you have the BTAC IoT security and privacy recommendations, which is a great checklist. In the front, they have a summary that basically gives you a checklist where you can go through and look at your IoT devices on if they're compliant to that or not. There's the Open Connectivity Foundation and the Linux Foundation IoTivity that is both giving you a lot of information about like what you can do on the IoT device side. The Open Web Application Security Project also has an IoT project that is a comprehensive suite of information that you can find in there. But most importantly, when we talk about all this, remember we're in the wild, wild west of technology. You hear so many buzzwords about MQTT, CoAP, and all these different technologies that so many clients request these days, and so many clients only hear in the media, and they come to you. Be careful with that. Like those buzzwords and those technologies, they're like the new Kool-Aid, and you don't necessarily want to drink the new Kool-Aid if it doesn't taste. Data security. The third part of this solution is data security. If I wouldn't talk about it, it would be a bad talk because that is the one thing that we want to like take care of. If you lose 143 million data sets like Equifax did, you're gonna be in front of like court and being held responsible for that. So can anybody decipher this binary number or approximately guess what it could be? I've mentioned the number before. Nope. Okay. It's 7.5 billion. Anybody remember that number? The amount of people we have in this world? And if we use this binary number, we have 2 to the power of 33 amount of states we can actually represent. Which also means if we would give a questionnaire with 33 binary questions, yes, no, checkboxes, to everyone and every single person in this world, and they would like differentiate between each other, uniquely. We could give a unique identifier to every person in this world without ever asking them their name or their birth date or anything like that. So I only need 33 questions in theory that are yes/no questions to identify each and every single person. Which also brings me to the point, if we think about all the cases that happened in the past, like Carrier IQ that had 150 million devices and could query way more than 1,000 metrics on every single device they were having in the database. It's pretty scary, especially after that was exposed 2 years after they've already deployed it. Ashley Madison. If you were up for a quick hookup, Ashley Madison was your site. And they were publicly, the hackers that hacked their database because they weren't having good security and actually publicizing their breach, their data breach that happened. You could publicly query your email address and if you've been in the and look up if you've been in the Ashley Madison database. And funnily, even with Ashley Madison, they had so bad defaults. I could sign up anybody in the audience. You would never have to confirm your email address, and you would have ended up in the Ashley Madison database. Potentially, your wife could look you up and one night slap you, and you're like, what happened? Why? And she's been like, yeah, you've been on Ashley Madison. And I mean, they had so bad defaults. If you even knew about it at one point and were asking Ashley Madison to delete you because you never signed up, they wanted a $49.95 fee from you to delete you. And they didn't even delete you, which the proof showed, or which the hack showed, sorry. Even better, a few days ago, if you were looking on Engadget on Twitter, they have this great article about lawsuit claims Disney illegally collected data in kids' apps. You would think yeah, that's one app maybe. No, 52. All of the Disney apps that are available in the US App Store. We're collecting data, and we're talking about immense sets of data on what your kid liked. They were with surgical precision, they were making the next movie for your kid about the thing they liked the most, so they could potentially get your kid to get to you and get the money out of your wallet. And that was pretty creepy, and even Ted the Bear said that's very creepy. And I have to agree, at least this one time. With data security, for me, it's always keep transfer data to a minimum. It's ridiculous if you ever look with a man-in-the-middle attack at some of your apps, or even if you only have it running while your iPhone is not in the do not disturb mode, because there's so many requests done and so much of that data isn't even used. And if you think about the amount of CO2 we are just blowing out, for example, on all this trash data, it's ridiculous. Probably log and encrypt data. This is a tough part because it's not easily done. iOS, for example, and Android both give you options to use a basic layer of encryption, and that would keep out 99% of all those hackers already. Scheduled maintenances. Your product doesn't end with a release; it ends with the maintenance circle after a few years. So you have to maintain it. Disclose data breaches. More than often, when people hear that something is broken or that some password has been exposed, they will change it, so disclose it as soon as you can. Not like Equifax, 9 months after, and after you've made made bank basically with the money that or with the stuff that you already sold. Think like a hacker. We're going to come to that in a second again. And authentication should be more than one global binary state. Quite often, when you do introspective with applications and actually look at their header files or their method definitions or method declarations, it is is authenticated. Boolean, yes, no. That's not a state. And all of that and examples on what you can do is also in the repository again. Especially since you don't want this guy to steal your data. In times of net neutrality and privacy, and especially if you look at governments blocking you out of Twitter and other platforms where you could potentially spread information, it is up to us. It's not up to governments or institutions anymore. It's up to us to make a difference, and it's up to us to not expose these kind of things. So to summarize my talk and to give you a few takeaways you can have from this talk, it's think like a hacker. Try to change your perspective. Try to change the side of the table you're sitting on. This is easily said, but harder done. There's Kali Linux, for example, that gives you a whole suite of applications that you can use. If you have a WordPress blog, for example, to give you an idea, there's a wizard-based exploiting attacker that gives you an option, that gives you ideas on how another person that would try to come into your blog, what they would be using. So think like a hacker and find weak spots in your application. No industry standards and state of the technology. You're already doing the first part by being here. You're doing the second part by giving me feedback, and you're doing the third part by contributing to the repository I built up. It is easy to keep to being up to date, and it is easy to question what you're buying. Like a lot of these devices I've been like showing you guys, I come on the internet and I buy it because I live in America. But at the same moment, like you have to question what kind of data is being sourced from that. I have 5 Amazon Alexas at home and now 2 Google Homes. Pretty scary that I have 7 microphones all over my house they're currently like listening to me. There's a lot of solutions. If you look, for example, with the Amazon Alexa, there's an Adafruit Arduino breaker where you could easily turn it off when you don't need it. Those are great solutions. Look into it and stay up to date. Be aware it's a wild, wild west, but learn from mistakes of others and adopt risk assessment techniques. For example, my girlfriend's a mechanical engineer, and she's engineering like braking parts for your car. And you don't want that braking part to fail. And especially if it's her fault that it fails and you're like dying from it, she would be responsible for it. So in engineering, in classical traditional engineering, we have like methodologies like FMAA, where you would have to do like a risk assessment before you even start like doing any kind of engineering. And these are the things you want to have when the judge called you up front and you want to show like that you did an FMAA and you thought about it. And it's something that helps you keeping in mind what you're actually doing and with what kind of data you're dealing. Take responsibility for the whole life cycle. How many apps are there in the App Store that just got killed because they're still 32-bit and people were still using it? That's the same thing. Like you need to do security patches and regular maintenance and monitoring. It's not only a thing that is done with the release, but it's something that keeps on going. And most importantly, trust no one. Don't trust the person next to you. Don't trust any kind of certificates that you don't know about. Keep encryption on all environments and all data. So often it is so funny when you put in like a subdomain in def.something in front of it, and it's suddenly no longer HTTPS, it's suddenly no longer protected, and you can read all the data in between. And you're like, yeah, let's have a look at the development environment. And you see that there's a link in between some kind of like database, like Postgres database, to the production data. And you're like, yeah, like why would you have like all the protection on this production environment just to satisfy Apple's like app transport security, but then the development environment doesn't have it? To my lessons learned and what I've learned in the last years is lead only with research. Again, don't drink the Kool-Aid of all these hot buzzwords. MQTT is surely great if you're at home and like doing all your own tinkering, but it's not necessarily the technology you want to use for all the devices you're actually putting into the market. Future-proof software and hardware by leading only with research. Do the legwork up front. Do stuff like the FMAA, I said. Like, there's this movement where like all the other industries want to be like software and don't have to do an FMAA. It's not necessarily good. Follow standards and update along the way. Do your due diligence when you're updating apt and like actually updating your Linux system. Don't have like security patches. We've seen like the easy examples, but there's also the really hard examples where some SSL, some library that you've been using has like a go-to fail twice. Choose the right tooling and platform. This goes together with it's a wild, wild west. It doesn't necessarily mean that the tooling is available yet, but it's up for you to make it sometimes. So don't go the easy way and like do it every time with a bash command file, but go along and actually create tooling and share it. Have a backup plan for offline situations. I don't know why everything has to always go over the internet, but it seems like the way to go, which doesn't mean you have to follow again. And lab doesn't equal production. Just because it works in the lab doesn't mean it scales up, which also means you should do like real testing on that. And if you don't believe me, that was a screenshot I took like a week ago. Amazon Alexa can now control exoskeletons. If Amazon Alexa can control exoskeletons, I might think about the 5 Alexas I have at home, because I don't want to be killed in the middle of the night by the exoskeleton. So I'm going to finish my talk with the talk resources. I'm more than happy, and it would be great to talk to a few of you guys after we're going to have a few drinks at the party. If you make a photo of this, you're going to end up at the PK pass for my business card. If you add it, you're automatically being announced if I'm around you, because I have an IB kit in my backpack. So that's easy to make a contact with me later on. I have the drawings custom made again by Maxaro, so if you ever need like awesome drawings, he's the guy to go to. There's a great talk on the Internet of Things is going to destroy us all that gave me some of the inspirations in here. And again, feel free to contribute and like look at the information that I've provided in the GitHub repository. Thank you very much.